So we have a few other changes going on this year, which actually are kind of exciting. Part of the problem with the COVID spread and everyone being in lockdown is that we can't gather like we used to. And usually this time of the year, we have this huge open auditions for our current students who are seeking actors to use in their thesis films. So this year we're doing a little bit differently.
This year, we're giving things a try online, and even if you've never auditioned before, the steps are easy. Go to our events page and click on the link to check out our students' thesis films.
Once you get to that page, you'll see a list of the films and the characters. So what you do is you find a character that interests you, click on the audition sides link to look at the script and review any notes that are necessary, and then record your audition with your own camera.
Then you can complete our easy form, and this is going to allow you to upload your headshot, your resume, your audition, and even a character slate.
It's very, very convenient. Now, if you're like me and this whole self-recording and self-submission stuff bothers you a little bit, or even if you're new, I have something very special for you next. I was able to talk to my colleague, who's also an MPI acting instructor and a local talent agent, Rob Winkworth, who has some great tips for actors submitting online auditions. Just for everybody who's watching, I'm here with my colleague and my agent, Rob Winkworth, to talk a little bit about submissions in the time of COVID-19. This is something that people have been doing for a while now, but I think it's more prevalent now that we can't get out. But it's recording ourselves for auditions and submitting. How important has it been in the past to do so compared to now? Has it been something people regularly did, and how well is it taken?
Sure. The self-submission process has definitely kind of become increasingly important over the last 10 years by far. I would say at the I Group, most of our commercial auditions and industrial auditions, we see about 30% to 40% being self-submissions, and then film and TV to a much higher percentage, as much as possible. Mostly through programs like Actors Access and things like that. That is where most self-submissions are happening. It is a very important skill, and I think just also now that COVID is happening, most of our auditions are going to happen in this world, and most of callbacks are going to happen in this world. So being able to create the right environment for your audition and to be able to Zoom in that environment too is going to be an important part.
Yeah, you say it's a skill. Now, I think that's an important thing to understand. It's something that's a little bit different than auditioning in person. I've always hated having to do it myself at home, and I would always come to your office to record when I could, mainly because I was uncomfortable. What advice would you give to actors who are just starting out with it, maybe even those who've done it before, on what this skill entails? How is it different doing it at home than it is coming in and auditioning?
One of the most important thing I think to remember is that the people that are watching and evaluating your audition spend their entire lives, most of the time, watching film and video. That's how they make a living. And so they're very sensitive to things like lighting and sound and other distractions that we might kind of just take for granted and not really worry about. Producers and directors stress about those things. And so when we do a self-submission video that isn't considerate of their kind of artistic sensibilities, that's one of the first things that's a big deal. So just keeping that in mind, that making sure that I'm self-submitting with good sound and good lighting really does make a big difference.
Let's talk about the tech. What are the things that actors are most uncomfortable with about the tech? You talked about lighting and sound, camera. What are things that we need to get more comfortable with?
Yeah, definitely those two elements. And probably the element that happens before that is just stabilization, like having good, whatever it is, surfaces to prop your computers on, or having a tripod to put your phone on, or whatever it is. Like some simple thing like that can make a world of difference just in your ability to control it and in your comfort level. So that level of investment makes a big deal. understanding, just basic lighting techniques, making sure you have at least one, maybe a primary light and then a secondary light, so you can have at least 2 lights on your face to kind of make sure that you're seen in screen. Those things make a big difference. It doesn't need to be anything fancy. I use, and I have one right here, when I got to do, this is like from my basement, or costs $5 at Ace Hardware, and it's a perfectly good way of adding light to a scene that you can kind of clip in space and have that main light and that secondary light on you. And if you put a little piece of paper over it or something like that, it acts as a filter and it reduces the light. You can do plenty of that and improve the lighting that happens. In film, for self-submissions, you can also affect that a little bit and let there be some shadow, let there be a little drama to it, but it is really important that we see your full face. You're obviously getting chosen for look, so that good lighting that allows production and the director to see your full face and how it's featured is very important. And then with sound, that's another aspect to it, is just making sure that it's good and having good proximity to the camera. In a self-submission for film, you're typically going to be shooting chest up, or maybe even shoulders up. It's going to be pretty tight framing, so your face will be pretty close to camera, or you should allow it to be pretty close to camera so that it picks up the sound very well. I don't want to be distant and zoom in, because then the intimacy of my voice isn't as strong. I want to make sure that it's there. My reader should also be in decent proximity to the camera. If I'm eyelining straight to camera right now when I do a film submission, my eyeline should be just a little bit off the center of the camera as I do the read. And my reader should be in pretty good proximity to my eyeline, ideally, so that the camera picks up the audio just as well as it picks up my audio. Typically, the intimacy of what's going on. Most self-submission film scripts, particularly, are 2 people dialogue in some close proximity. So we want to get the sense that that's going on in the scene. So sometimes having just, using your phone or using your computer is good enough sound for that. There are also like just little extended, like telescoping microphones or even lavalier microphones that plug in pretty easily that can improve the sound experience. But they certainly aren't necessary. And on the other side of that, they aren't very expensive either. There's lots of options out there that exist to kind of improve those 2 things.
You also talked about creating an environment that we're comfortable in. Mainly, you mentioned the people that we're reading with, as well as the light. What are the things that you find most distracting, or the things that make you want to just skip on to the next audition when you're watching videos?
Right. For film, it should really be something that is just pretty simple. You want a plain wall with nothing on it is totally fine. It doesn't need to be like a fancy screen. It doesn't need to be like a blue screen, or it doesn't have to have, but it should be simple. I wouldn't want someone to be distracted by what is behind me. I want them just to be focusing on my face and my expressions and what I'm conveying through that moment. This is just kind of the setup that I have in my basement for if I was going to be doing just basic self-submission for something. You can see I have 2 lights that are set up. They're kind of propped on the ceiling. I have a little tripod that I've even put on an ironing board to make sure it's at a good height, because I want the camera to be as straight into my face as possible. I kind of want to eliminate any angle that's just unnecessary that's there. This little bit of lighting, it helps create just the right amount. It also gets rid of the shadow behind me. That's me from the camera. And that's decent for self-submission. It's not, the world's greatest scenario, but it works. Another piece that's just important is like this kind of eyeline that I have right now in my self-submission is great. I don't want my eyeline to go too much farther to the side. I'm not looking right into camera. I'm a little bit off camera, but I can see both eyes clearly. I can see my face clearly, and I can see clearly whatever emotion that I have going on. The more and more I turn away from camera, the worse it just really gets for impact.
What are the most common complaints you get maybe from producer directors or questions that you get from actors that might help us to tweak those things, make me heard, make me seen?
Right. I mean, the biggest complaints I get are lighting and sound. I mean, that's by far the most consistent thing.
All right.
That people are concerned about, that producers or directors simply just can't get past things. From actors, it's often just, what is everybody worrying about? Like, that's the other side of it. It's just kind of like the question you're asking me: what are directors and producers worried about? I think what I see the biggest step coming forward is that personality element, that allowing your personality to shine through, allowing yourself to shine through, even when you have this kind of intense, very small space. They're only evaluating you based on, these kind of technical things that you've done. How do I let myself kind of come through, and how do I let production get comfortable with who I am? And I think production and direction is going to be concerned about that too. Most producers and directors like to do callbacks. They like to meet people before they make final decisions, because that's a very impactful moment. They get to really feel the personality of the person they're going to work with. So when you aren't going to have that, how do you convey those things? I think a good slate where you state your name and your height, and you do so with some personality, even if it's like really simple and just those two little bits of information, can really make a big difference if you're comfortable and you're kind of having some fun, or allowing your personality to come forward with that slate. Lets them see you just as you are, and it gives that other insight into you that won't necessarily be available through, since it's not in person.
Hi, I'm Rob Winkworth. I'm 6'1". This is me without my glasses.
All right. Well, thanks, Rob. That was really helpful. I think I hope that a lot of people will get something out of that. I know I did. So I really appreciate you taking the time with us today, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in class again once all of this is out of our way. Good talk.
Absolutely, it's my pleasure, Scott. I hope it helps.
All right. Thanks.